Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Sunday, April 15, 2018, the 30th of Nisan, 5778. Hope you're doing well in your part of the world. We're going to get right to it on today's program because of everything going on here in the Middle East, specifically northern Israel, Syria really. The U.S. and their coalition with Great Britain and France over the weekend fired 100 missiles in response to the Assad chemical attack last week. That is the top story in the news. I was getting all these buzzes on my phone over Shabbat. I don't check my phone, but I was getting all these buzzes. I knew something was going on, and lo and behold, the U.S. did in fact attack some of the chemical capabilities of the Assad regime. So joining us now on the line is Anna Ahronheim, the military and defense correspondent for the Jerusalem Post, to talk about everything going on in regard to the Syrian situation. Anna, welcome to Israel Uncensored.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining us. And it is now Sunday, about 5 p.m. Israel time. What can you tell us? What is the latest development in terms of the situation with Syria and specifically the U.S. strike over the weekend?
Like you said, the strike happened around 1 o'clock in the morning, Saturday, Israel time. The U.S., France, and the U.K. launched around 100 missiles towards several different military regime sites that are used for chemical weapon development, production and research. The strikes really destroyed a lot of these centers. Today, it's been quite quiet. There's been a lot of reaction still coming in, but nothing really operationally wise that has gone on in the last few hours.
On the front page of today's Jerusalem Post, you talk about one of the major issues which could affect Israel, and that being the Russian supply of the S-300 systems to Syria. If you can explain how that would damage Israel's air superiority here in the region, if in fact those missiles, those systems are put into place there.
Correct. The Russians did mention yesterday that in response to the strikes, that Russia would once again possibly reconsider supplying the S-300 advanced air defense system to Syria. Again, this is just possibly reconsider. It's not something that is definitely on the table. The Russians did say that this is something that they refused to do a few years back out of concern from the West, but now they're saying that this is a possibility. Again, though, you have to remember that the Russians have already deployed the same system to Syria, along with their S-400 advanced system, and these are two systems which, if used by the Russians, are capable of tracking and intercepting aircraft and ballistic missiles over 380 kilometers away, meaning all of Israel. If a jet takes off from the south in Ramon Air Base, the Syrians would see that on their radar, again, if they do get the system. But again, the Syrians have already used their air defense systems against Israeli missiles and jets, and we saw in February already that a jet was downed by one of these systems.
Right, so that's definitely something that Israel needs to pay attention to. But let me ask you, in regard to the strikes over the weekend, I'm hearing a lot of different commentary. A lot of people are saying that this was just to send a message, that overall the strikes aren't really going to do anything long term in terms of regime change, in terms of maybe these strikes won't even deter Assad from using this type of weapon in the future. In your opinion, based on what you know, what do you think the overall effects are of the strikes?
There is a lot of talk that, this was just a show. This was just an act that, like you said, won't do much to prevent Assad from carrying out similar attacks. The Trump administration last year already struck an Assad airbase after the chemical weapons attack on Khan Sheikhoun, which was actually carried out almost a year to the date of what we saw in Duma. The thing is, when you're only striking chemical weapon facilities and you're not striking any real military sites like air bases where the jets took off from, if you're not going and really getting to the core, to the basic part of the Assad regime, its military, then the chances are he will just continue in doing what he does. He has the backing of Iran and he has the backing of Russia. And the Russian Air Force is pretty much the Assad Air Force.
At the same time, as all this is going on, you also reported earlier this morning down in the south that another Hamas tunnel was detected by the IDF and destroyed. At least 5 tunnels destroyed over the last several months. Apparently, this one was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, tunnel discovered. What can you tell us about this latest terror tunnel? Of course, we've had the weekly Friday violent demonstrations. I would call them attempts by Hamas and terror elements to infiltrate Israel. What would you say, and what can you talk about in terms of the latest terror tunnel discovered down in southern Israel?
Well, like you said, it was the 5th tunnel discovered so far this, I believe, since October that has been destroyed, crossing into Israel. But there were at least 3 other tunnels that were destroyed inside Gaza itself. The tunnel that was destroyed yesterday was connected to several other tunnels, a network of underground tunnels in Gaza built by Hamas. There were the other tunnels that were destroyed since October. Several of them belong to Islamic Jihad. This one, the army says, was ready for use. It was built beginning after the end of Operation Protective Edge in 2014. So that means 3 years of tunneling. And it reached about 20 meters inside Israel. So it's a significant tunnel. But again, the army said did not pose a threat. And it was monitored and watched since the work began on its construction.
Well, of course, we'll have to pay attention to the situation in the south and in the north. And it's been a hectic period here in Israel, but I want to thank you for your time. Anna Ahronheim, check her out. She is the military and defense correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. Several front-page articles today as a result of the situation here in the Middle East. Let's hope for quiet. Let's stay safe and keep up your good work and informing us about what is going on here in Israel and how it affects us. I want to thank you so much for joining us here on Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Have a great week.
You too. Take care. Thank you.
All the best. And we're going to take a short break and be right back with much more news, everything going on here in Israel and the Middle East. My name is Josh Hasten. This is Israel Uncensored, the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com. You can get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com, on Twitter at Josh Hasten, and on Facebook, Joshua Hasten. Big shout out to Ben Bresky for making this all happen, engineer extraordinaire. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
Who are we as a people? Who are we as a nation? What does it mean to be a Jew in the land of Israel, as a Jew in Judea? What is our message to the world? We're finally back in our land, and we get to ask these questions.
Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to make Judea and Samaria an issue for the entire world, to know that the Jews have a place in the world.
Israel Inspired with Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
And we are back. Josh Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is April 15, 2018. Hope you're doing well in your part of the world. I want to thank again Anna Ahronheim, the military and defense correspondent for the Jerusalem Post, for all the insight and everything going on in Syria. And again, the U.S. strike there, 100 projectiles, roughly twice the amount of firepower that President Trump launched against a Syrian airstrip 1 year ago, of course, in response to the chemical weapons attack just last week. The president said he was going to do something, didn't give exact details, wouldn't give a timetable, and then I was getting these crazy buzzes all through Shabbat. I knew something was going on. And let's see what happens. Let's see if Assad got the message or if he'll continue on his path. Here is something interesting the Jerusalem Post points out. The declassified documents provided by Paris, a 7-page long document talking about the Assad regime and how this was revealed that they're maintaining this covert chemical arms program, even though 5 years ago they said they would shut it down. Now, let's remember 5 years ago, at that time, the J-Post reports, U.S. President Barack Obama declined to enforce his red line declared a year earlier, 6 years ago, to strike at Assad militarily in the aftermath of another gas attack, a sarin gas attack that killed hundreds of children. Remember, the president said that he had this red line and he failed to strike Syria at that point. Remember that? And at the same time, you had the UN Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. They were also involved, and they actually got the Peace Prize, the Nobel Peace Prize for work that year because of this apparent deal with Syria and that they wouldn't use chemical weapons. They went over the red line. The Obama administration did nothing. And John Kerry, the Secretary of State at the time, said that the U.S. would remove 100% of Syria's chemical weapons. How ironic now. Here we are 6 years later, and the Assad regime is still targeting their own people with chemical weapons. All of that being said, Herb Kanan, and we talked about this with Anna a little bit, points out that Saturday's, in his words, attack does not threaten Assad. It threatens his chemical arsenal, but not his regime, because Russia won't allow him to be toppled. So long term, it looks like Assad is here to stay. And even with this attack, I mean, who knows? Nikki Haley sent a message that the U.S. is locked and loaded if necessary. But who knows how much longer Assad will be in charge there in Syria if decisive action is not taken. But it doesn't look like that is the plan. That is the goal right now. Anna also reported over the weekend, also mentioned in this morning's Jerusalem Post. Remember that Iranian drone, which was destroyed in February by Israel? It came into Israel's airspace. Well, apparently that drone was armed with explosives, and it was in the midst of carrying out an attack against the Jewish state. The IDF said on Friday the interception of the Iranian unmanned aircraft by an attack helicopter prevented an Iranian intent to carry out an attack against the state of Israel, read a statement by the army. So that wasn't just somebody having fun with a toy drone, or that wasn't just to send a message. That apparently was an attack drone on its way to try to murder Israelis, and thank God that was intercepted by our alert Israel Defense Forces. At the same time, of course, down in the south, apparently the demonstration, if you want to call it that, I would call it the attempted infiltrations, the terror activity on the Gaza border with Israel on Friday. This, out of the 3 Fridays in a row, this was, I guess, the weakest of the 3. Instead of burning tires, though, they burned Israeli flags, reports of burning of American flags. That was going on. Our IDF troops, though, protecting us on Israel's southern border, thank God. The snipers in place over the weekend. And thank God it was not as busy down there, even though there was still attempted infiltration, still a lot of stuff going on down there. And, of course, the discovery of the terror tunnel. The Islamic Jihad terror group, they were busy trying to get some of their terror tools in place to strike against Israel, but sometimes it doesn't work out as planned. Reported by Reuters, Islamic Jihad said 4 of its members were killed in an apparent accidental blast in Gaza on Saturday. The group said it was mourning its fighters who were martyred during preparations. In other words, this was going to be, God forbid, it could have been some horrible terror attack against Israel. But lo and behold, God had other plans, and the terrorists, 4 of them at least, detonated this device and killed themselves in the process. So that's some good news to report. Also, another large explosion reported in Syria at an Iranian base. This, according to Times of Israel staff, late Saturday at an Iranian weapons depot, according to an Arabic language media source. The depot said to be one of the biggest in the country, near Aleppo, being used by Iran's Lebanese proxy, that would be Hezbollah, and other Iranian militias in Syria. Apparently somebody struck them. Was it the U.S.? Was it Israel? Was it some type of accident as well? Who knows what happened? But apparently, in addition to Trump's strike on Friday night, there was another explosion Saturday night. And once again, directing our attention to the south. I mean, we're going back and forth, north-south, all throughout the show today. This past week, a member of the Hamas terror organization was killed overnight on Friday by IDF fire in Gaza. His name is Mohammed Hajila. He was part of a cell that carried out a deadly attack during Operation Protective Edge. And a number of IAF fighter jets attacked a terror target inside a military compound here, reported by JNI Media, belonging to Hamas. The attack came in response to the detonating of an explosive device against an IDF bulldozer near the border fence on Thursday. So this was a bad person, an evil individual who was killed after he and his terror friends killed 5 soldiers in the 2014 war in Gaza. But you could run and hide, but eventually justice will be served and the IDF will get you. And that was the case here. Switching gears here, Anne Frank has been in the news a lot over the last week or so. It was Holocaust Remembrance and Heroism Day here in Israel and around the world this past Wednesday. And Anne Frank was in the news for several reasons. Number one, reported here by the Times of Israel, one of the staffers at the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam was forbade from wearing a kippah. This was a Jew working at the Anne Frank house, and the management there told him, get rid of your kippah, your yarmulke. 25-year-old Barry Vingerling was told to remove his kippah upon showing up to his first day of work at the museum, according to a report in the Dutch Jewish Weekly. I believe it's NIW. Museum officials explained that the Anne Frank house had a policy against donning religious symbols that would break with their neutrality efforts, according to the newspaper. So his comment, Barry's comment, Vingerling, he said, quote, I work in the house of Anne Frank, who had to hide because of her identity. In that same house, I should have to hide my own identity? This is completely ridiculous. Apparently management deliberated and after 4 months said that this guy could wear his kippah. Imagine in the Anne Frank house you can't wear a kippah because of their policy. But maybe it's not surprising after learning that, reported by our good friend Gil Hoffman here from the Land of Israel Network, reported in the J-Post that proceeds of the Anne Frank diary are now going to the New Israel Fund. Who is the New Israel Fund? This is a extremist radical organization that receives funding from foreign governments that tries to influence policy here in Israel. It's an organization that supports other organizations with ties to terror. Carolyn Glick wrote about this extensively in her column in the Jerusalem Post on Friday. But what's going on here is that the memory of Anne Frank, unfortunately, is being hijacked. I know that this is a decision which was made, I guess, by the Anne Frank Foundation, founded by her father, Otto Frank, which administers her diary, but it's a shame. It's a shame that this radical organization is now going to be collecting on the sales of Anne Frank's diary. It's called the New Israel Fund. It's called the New Israel Fund for a reason. They don't like the way Israel is. They want to change Israel. They want to get the Judaism out of Israel. They don't like the way Israel is. They want to influence and impose all this radicalism here, and they want to introduce their brand of fanaticism here, and I'm talking about so-called left-wing fanaticism, and support these organizations which do damage to the state of Israel. They fund them, the New Israel Fund. So now, unfortunately, sales from this book, The Diary of Anne Frank, have been hijacked, I guess willingly, by the Anne Frank Foundation, and it's truly, truly unfortunate what's going on. Check out Carolyn Glick's column from this past Friday's J-Post to learn everything about the situation there with Anne Frank, of blessed memory. In other news here, we're getting ready. Of course, this is a big week in Israel. Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, followed by Israel's Independence Day, Yom HaAtzmaut. It all begins Tuesday night with Memorial Day. And yet here are others who seem to be wanting to hijack Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day. And it's not the first time. It happens year after year. Members of a group of bereaved families who want to join with Arabs in order to commemorate Memorial Day. On the surface, it seems like, this is perhaps a worthy cause coming together or whatnot, but comparing the IDF soldiers and the victims of terror who were killed in battle or murdered by terrorists to those terrorists themselves, and having the families of those terrorists come together with Israelis to mourn on Israel's Memorial Day is way out of line, in my opinion. But the story here, the news here, is that several hundred members of bereaved families signed a petition supporting Avigdor Lieberman, our defense minister, who's preventing the entry of Gaza Arabs to participate in this joint memorial ceremony. Apparently it means that the Arabs from Judea and Samaria will be allowed to participate in the ceremony, but he's preventing the Arabs from Gaza from coming in. And of course, this is up there with the High Court of Justice. Those who want to hold this ridiculous ceremony want to be allowed to do so. They're bringing it up to the High Court. We'll see how the High Court rules. But I guess anything makes sense in this day and age when I saw images of Jews, nonetheless, who were saying Kaddish over the Hamas terrorists who were killed in Gaza trying to infiltrate Israel and attack our communities, and the fact that you had 20 or 30 terrorists die as a result of their activities, as a result of Hamas's activity, and then you have Jews who are saying Kaddish, I guess, in New York for these people. I guess anything is possible. So I guess it's believable that there's an event in which the mothers and fathers of terrorists gather with Israelis who lost loved ones fighting those terrorists or who perished in terror attacks coming together. I guess anything is possible. But that's the fringe, and let's not let that group take away from the meaningful and important and very emotional day, which is Memorial Day here in Israel. I mean, there's no other time period in the year that's like this period. You have Passover, and then the Holocaust Remembrance and Heroism Day, followed by Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut, and then you have Jerusalem Day, Lag BaOmer, Shavuot, one after another. There's nothing like this in the world. So if you haven't experienced it, the highs and the lows, come to Israel and see it for yourselves. We're going to finish with some positive news here. Before we go, lawmakers in Honduras on Thursday voted to relocate the country's embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Israel, a quote here by the Foreign Ministry spokesperson Emmanuel Nachshon, Israel congratulates the National Congress of Honduras for passing with an overwhelming majority a resolution in favor of opening an embassy in Jerusalem. The measure was approved 59 to 33. It has to be approved now by the executive branch, but hopefully it's a done deal. So we have Guatemala, we have the U.S., and hopefully now Honduras is joining them in moving their embassy to Israel's unified, undividable capital of Jerusalem. And we'll end with that on today's program. Everyone out there, let's have a meaningful Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day. Remember everyone who gave their lives so that we could live as Jews here in the land of Israel, have our first army in over 2,000 years, and live as free men and women in the land of Israel. Let's never forget their sacrifice, and also, of course, remembering the victims of terror who also paid the ultimate price so that we could live here as Jews in the land of Israel. And then let's party hard on the 70th anniversary of the modern-day state of Israel. Who would have thunk it? Unbelievable. Starting Wednesday night, Thursday, the whole country will turn into one big party. Since it's 70, a round number this year, especially a lot of events being planned everywhere throughout the country. And let's all have a good time. Let's be safe. Most importantly, between now and when we talk again next week. And I'll just give you my contact information one last time. Josh@thelandofisrael.com is my email. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten. On Twitter, @Josh Hasten. Chag Sameach. Happy Israel Independence Day. 5778-2018 to everyone out there. Again, between now and when we talk again next week, everyone be safe. Shalom, shalom from Gush Etzion, Israel.